Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here. My name is indeed Léon van Berlo. I seem to do BIM stuff for the last 10 years. At least you should call it BIM, because otherwise people don't take you serious. I grew up as a carpenter, but wasn't really good at it. So I listened to my parents that said you had to keep on going to school and keep on studying. Ended up as an architectural engineer and finally worked for the National Research Institute in the Netherlands. So my official title is researcher, but I really don't feel very comfortable on that. These last 10 years at TNO, I did BIM stuff. I did a lot of standardization on cloud BIM standards, on national validation and maturity standards, on national BIM guidelines. We did a geo BIM standards. We also did a lot of process tools to help organizations find their way in the forest of BIM. And I'm leading a couple of open source development software projects. So I seem to be doing quite a lot of BIM. I'm not used to starting with an introduction of myself. The reason I'm doing it today is that I had the opportunity to show a picture of myself that I can be positive. This is probably the last slide you'll see on that for the rest of the day. A little bit about TNO. This is my first keynote. I'm used to making presentations of 20 minutes, so I thought I had a little bit more time now to do some introductions, so you'll have to sit through it, I'm sorry. TNO is a national research institute. We have 15 locations in the Netherlands. We have a lot of agencies and offices all over the world. And the idea behind TNO is that we act between the fundamental research at universities and the actual applied knowledge in industry. So 20% of our turnover basically is collaboration with universities. We have to do publications on that as well. There's people doing a PhD on that. 30% is knowledge development. We do that in European research projects, some of them even with Irish partners. I'll talk about that later. And 50 to 60% of our turnover is knowledge application. So basically, a company walking in with a question, we give them they give us a contract and we try to answer their questions by doing research. The last part is only 2% of our turnover, so I don't know why they put it in there. Talking about turnover, it's about 500 million last year, 3,000 people. On the BIM side, we have a core team of 8 people. But the BIM projects have a yearly turnover of about 8 million euros. So that's only BIM research and development. As you can see, most of our, or not most, but a lot of our turnover also comes from international approach. In other words, we're an independent, objective research organization. I'm not here to sell you anything. That's also the reason why I'm going to be very negative, because I can. But I have to admit, also because of that reason, I'm very nervous. Like I said, this is my first keynote. I've never talked to more than 200 people at once. So it's very strange to me that there's actually people over there. So looking at a screen, listening at sound, it's like you could connect through a webinar. You don't even have to be here. That actually would make me less nervous, but good that you're here. But also, like I said, I'm Dutch. The Netherlands doesn't have a BIM mandate. This talk is about collaboration. I'm basically going to tell that you shouldn't work in a central BIM model, which kind of is the basis of BIM level 1 that you're talking about. I'm a carpenter, so I don't like these vague conceptual stories about all the weird process and cultural changes, and that's not for me. There are some religion jokes in here, so that's always, I mean, this is Ireland, right?
What does the German do now?
Yeah. Could you sit over there? And it's basically about interoperability. Collaboration in BIM is about interoperability, and I came here with this. This is a power adapter. So who am I to talk about collaboration and semantics when I can't even plug in my computer in your power sockets? And I curse a lot, but hey, this is Ireland, so that's probably not a problem over here, is it? I've never heard the word bollocks so much in one day. This is really nice. Another reason, and this might be the main reason, the topic of these 2 days is an integrated future. I met the guy who came up with that yesterday. That made me even more nervous. Because I'm a carpenter. What the hell do I know about the future? Don't know anything about the future. This whole talk is not about the future. I decided just to talk about what's going on right now in the Netherlands. And hopefully that may inspire you to think about what you're going to do tomorrow, or maybe even the day after tomorrow, because Jameson tonight, right? So tomorrow won't do lots. But further than that in the future, again, I'm a carpenter, sorry, I just don't know. We did projects 5 years ago to change the world, and nothing happened of that, and the ideas we had back then seemed to be not making that much sense anymore now, so anything I could say about the future now will probably be obsolete in a couple of weeks, maybe months. So, let's talk about history. Like I said, TNO, we do a lot on BIM research. We have a great track record. This is just to impress you, right? Because I'm nervous, I have to make a good impression that you think that I actually know what I'm talking about. The first reference of BIM in any publication was in 1992. That was actually a TNO publication. We'd written a BIM handbook already, a national BIM guidelines in 1988. It's a really thick book. It's really nice. Everything that's in there kind of still makes sense today. You can just make a copy of it and mandate it or whatever you want. We've worked on IFC since the beginning. We're involved in several levels of Building Smart, and we're developing multiple standards and tools. So we basically know what works and why, and we also know what doesn't work and why. So, that was me. How about you? Anyone here who can predict the future? This is the part where you raise your hand. Okay, so we're on the same page. That's nice. Are you ready for controversial statements? Okay. Yeah, I'll ask again in a couple of minutes. Sarcasm, is that okay, or is it perfect? Oh, nice. And then the hardest question: how about IFC? Who's working with IFC? 7? Oh, it's a bit more, but who likes IFC? 10? That's good. So IFC is not an issue in Ireland. Why is that? Is the focus on Kobe, or? Yes? So someone has to tell you that Kobe is actually a model view definition of IFC? It's no two different things, it's the same? Yes. Okay. Okay, let's continue. Start back with a little bit of history. I'm going to talk about collaboration, and any talk about collaboration, of course, has to have this picture. Who has never seen this picture before? 2. Okay. That's interesting. Usually it's 1, and that's a student that's in the wrong hotel. But I'd like to talk to you afterwards. This is fun. Well, I cannot bring this any more more beautiful than it is. On the left side, we apparently see chaos, and on the right side, we see structure and order with a shared data model. I'm going to tell you what a shared data model is. I know you think you know what it is, but a shared data model is not the same as a shared database. It's not a common BIM environment. It's not the online cloud where you drop your IFCs. It's actually an agreement on how we are going to name or call or classify objects. So this original picture from 1998, or whatever year it came from, is about the reason why people started to work on IFC. It's on how shall we all call a door? Because when you get 5 different data sets, and in every data set the door is defined in a different way, and some people think that a curtain wall is a door and others don't, that doesn't work. So you need agreements on how are we going to call things. That's basically IFC. I think 700 objects, 12,000 properties. It's a big agreement. It's one of the biggest efforts in any industry. So that's IFC. It's all about creating agreements. So basically, the picture that you should be interpreting as something like this. So instead of having to import 5 different data sets that you don't know what things mean, you always get the same kind of structured data. So the doors are always the doors, and they always have the same properties. So that shared data model is more, you kind of use the same agreements on how to structure your data. So, what about that central data storage? Because when you Google BIM, these are the pictures you always get. It's like that black box in the middle that kind of solves everything. And it's a nice picture. It seems logic, it brings structure. It's almost like a religion. It kind of seems to work for people. Okay, you laughed. That's good. We have that one then. Thank you. Most of the nerves are gone now. Like I said, I cannot predict the future, because in 2008 we thought centralizing everything in a central model data repository was a very good thing. We started developing an open source BIM server, which was basically an IFC database. We did a first release in 2009. We did a national pilot in 2010 because people actually started to use it. Actually made a report on that, scientific report. And the pilot basically involved research on what works best. Everyone using their own software, or everyone using the same software in a central database, or maybe some hybrid solution where you can use IFC, where you can use your own software and exchanging with IFC and putting that all in the central data storage. We looked at several projects. We had several companies involved, larger, smaller, bigger projects. And this is a schema of one of the setups that we came across. So the idea is that you think that the central model is in the middle. It's called BIM sync. But depending on who you ask in this project, they all gave a different answer to where is the central model. And this was only at one stage in one project. So when you looked at multiple projects and multiple stages, it became a chaos. It's really, there's no one central point, and whoever you ask. So the only conclusion we could come up with, and this is, you should read the paper when you want to know more details about it, but there is no central model, at least not in a collaboration project. On your own computer, when you use one of the BIM software packages, you have a central model in there, and the views and the drawings are all generated from that central model. But as soon as you work together and collaborate in a project, we found that there isn't. And actually, we weren't the first that came up with that. Denmark already knew that in 2006. They even updated their schema in 2008. Tekla is advocating the same. Oh, that's the next slide. This is your slide, Arto. Arto Kivanimi already tried to tell everyone for years. Tekla is advocating the same. There's no central IFC model instance. So what's the alternative? As I said, we looked at the industry in the Netherlands. How are they working? And we came up with this drawing. It's basically a very sketchy drawing because it had to be in the publication. But for some reason, it's popping up in a lot of presentations lately. Basically, what you're seeing on the right is native software applications. People use that to do their job. They don't get hired to collaborate. They get hired to do that job. They get hired to do an architectural design, a construction design, an MEP solution, engineering, quantity takeoff, whatever. That's the actual value that's being created on the right side. Part of what they're modeling, part of the data, so not everything, part of the data is being put onto this central model server. It could be integrated, and the definition of integrated is quite vague in this sense, because you can turn it into one new model, but you can still have the multiple sub-models and discipline models not interconnected, but just viewed in the same way. You use that for analysis, you draw conclusions, and you send back the conclusions to the original modelers. So IFC seems to be working to bring together the data that actually has to be put together to coordinate. So there's no round tripping, there's no exporting of IFC, importing it into another system, and exporting it again, and then doing it 5 or 6 times, writing a report and saying that IFC doesn't work. The industry doesn't work in that way. You don't hand over every time into a different partner. Everyone makes their own model. Everyone has their own truth on their data. And of course you have to collaborate. So you export a part of what should be coordinated to the team to do that. So a couple of slides with a lot of text. The observations was there is no loss of data when you use IFC because the data you're working on is still in your native software package. That's the one you're working with. The actual question was, what kind of data do you need from others to do your job? So it wasn't about sharing data. It was about what data do you need from others and what do others need from you? People still can't answer that question, by the way. Another conclusion was that by working with this way, you can collaborate with people that don't have the same BIM competence as you. So you don't have to have a mandate for a high BIM competence level. You can still collaborate with people that are on a different level than you. So, to conclude, the found conclusion was working live in a central model has more downsides than advantages. There were other issues as well: ownership of data, legal aspects, BIM managers, change requests. There's a lot of technical solutions that could be created to harvest some kind of a conceptual thinking that we don't want in the first place. There were even comments of people that say that centralizing collaboration stimulates wrong behavior. Because when you have this central data store, it's still throwing out, you can still throw data over the wall into that central database and just say, well, good luck with it. Having one central data store doesn't mean that you collaborate. The walls that you throw data to others are still the same. You just have one wall instead of 5, but still no collaboration when you mandate people to work in a central data storage. So the real questions, as I said, what do you need to do your job? What kind of data do you need? What do you need from others? Where are you collaborating? Where are you coordinating? So when you actually want to collaborate, everyone brings their own craftsmanships and expertise and brings that together. So it's not dumping your data into a central data storage and inventing some new role of a BIM manager that then has to figure out everything. That's not collaboration. That's dumping the problem to the BIM manager. So that's not working in practice. So how about all these BIM cloud platforms that keep popping up? Nothing wrong with them, basically. Because everything now is in the cloud and everything is connected, which is pretty good. But basically it's still an island. And I know the advertisement that the islands can import open standards and they're extendable and they have an open API, but basically in the end it's still an island. And there are many of those islands. You all know them, I don't have to spit them out for you. Some of them are over here. And I don't want to be negative about these, because when you actually do collaborate, putting your data on one of these islands can still be very beneficial. It's very good, but don't trust on I'm using this island and we're all on the same island so we can collaborate, because that's not the case. So the situation right now, the different islands don't really integrate with each other. They're kind of trying to maintain a situation of a data lock-in, because it's easy to work together on that island, so all come to our island. And you still have to pick an island. There's some islands have features you want from, and other islands also have other features. But you can't grab 2 features from the one system and a couple of features from the other system and then bring that together and use that for your own sense. So that's why we're building BIM bots at this moment. So a bot is a tiny feature that automates a specific task for you. And I won't go into detail on this. I have an example on that in a couple of slides. But basically what we're trying to do, and it's the same story as Kimon told, we're trying to get the different niche applications, the apps as he would call them, to interconnect to each other, to integrate in a sense. And there are many of those bots right now already. And basically, what I'm trying to say to you is that the centralization idea, it sounds really nice, but it will never work. The problem is that there will only be more data. We're really going towards a data-driven industry. The number of sensors and the Internet of Things, I mean, everything's providing data to us. So there's more and more data every time from different sources, and even a shared data model like IFC is not enough for you to actually collaborate. And IFC is only one part of all the data that's coming to you in a couple of years. So this kind of gradually slips into future. So back to the present again. This is the Amsterdam Arena. It's an IFC model, 10 million objects. The fun story to tell about this is that the Amsterdam Arena said, we paid for this, so we want it. And the architect says it's intellectual property. And I'm hearing response. This sounds familiar? Okay, listen. The Amsterdam Arena said, it's right. It is your intellectual property, but it's our data. So unless you want us to copy it, and it still will be your intellectual property, you just provide us with the data, or it will be the last job you will do for us. So in the end, the data was provided, and the data is owned by the client because they paid for it, and the intellectual property of the design is still owned by the architect, because that's how it works, at least in the Netherlands, with copyright. So no issues there. The Amsterdam Arena is, I think, one of the 3 or 4 stadiums in the world that actually breaks even and doesn't need subsidies from the national government. So you can kind of figure out what kind of mentality they have. I won't mention the cursing words that they used. The vision that the Amsterdam Arena has is to make data-driven operations. So they really want kind of a living BIM. So they want to integrate information about traffic information, weather reports, seating availability, parking gates, beer taps, heating and cooling, automatic doors, fire system, temperature, waiting lines before the beers, video cameras, etc., etc. They're a European playing city for the European Championships in 2020, so they want this up and running in 2018. And again, I'm not talking to you about the future, because they actually got a lot of this already up and running. This is a screenshot from the control room. There's actually a control room overlooking the field that has a BIM model, that has a traffic information, that has information about the beer taps. They know what's going on, and they can actually steer and guide their facility to facilitate the processes and the events that are going on in there. So this is today. Another example of process mining, we got a master student that went into the Erasmus Medical Center, which is the biggest academic medical center in the Netherlands. So you pay attention. Wake up, wake up. How am I on time, by the way?
You're okay.
22 minutes? Is that my time? Okay. He looked at the data of the systems that were actually in the facility. And he came up that a lot of the elevators, so the personal elevator, the fire elevator, and a lot of the electrical doors broke down a lot of times. The hospital didn't know that because for some reason they had the data, but it was hidden inside their systems. So they seem to be fixing it, and they're now saving hundreds of thousands of euros each year. Just by eliminating the maintenance they have to do by fixing the problem instead of fixing the problem up front instead of fixing it every time that something happens. This is done by a student. This is done in 2 days. He just wanted some data to test his hypothesis that event information could bring something to the industry. The reason why I'm showing you this is that this medical facility didn't have a handover. They didn't ask for BIM data to maintain their operations. They already have the data. They just have to read out the data that's already in their facility. They don't even know where the doors are. They have to figure that out later. But they're still saving hundreds of thousands a year. So this is not about BIM. This is about data. Another example is about This is a project we're working together with Siemens. I'll skip through this very fast because I don't have enough time left. It integrates sensor information, simulations, and BIM. So every time something happens inside your building, a fire breaks out, the simulation is run on how the fire will spread. The building automation system will guide people through the best exit routes, so away from the fire. When the fire spreads in a different way, the sensors will pick up. There will be a new simulation. When people don't listen to the signs and just walk a different route, it will be picked up by the camera sensors. There will be a new simulation. So it's a constant iteration of simulations and event-driven events. Talking about event-driven events, we are still using those the BIM bots principle for that. So we got examples of data coming into the ecosystem. It's being simplified first before it goes to a simulation. It's running through a COBE, fire simulation, etc., etc. And every time something changes, the whole network of different apps triggers. And this is not a centralized system. The actual evacuation simulation is being done by Siemens on their servers, on their private servers. We got an explosion simulation model in there, which is a military classified model, which is running on the servers of TNO. So it's not open source, but it has an interface that you can actually put BIM data in and get a result back. Kimon talked about FedIFM, which is, I think, a very good example of different bots connecting to each other. There's another project going on that uses the security camera information to get a point cloud, compares that with a BIM model, and comes up with a result if you're ahead of schedule or behind schedule. So this is just using the information that's already out there by video cameras. Another project we're doing with RM Precast actually in Galway, making a point cloud by just using a Google Tango device on site, getting that point cloud, checking it with the original BIM model, and seeing if the precast that's being manufactured in the factory will actually fit on site. So what I'm saying is it's happening. It's today. I'm not talking about the future. So what about BIM server? This is a little bit of a commercial break. BIM server is still alive. When you go to the website now, you will see that we positioned it as a stable base to build upon. So it doesn't have a graphical user interface anymore. It doesn't have a visualization tool. We target developers now. I have really great examples of a developer that made a niche application in 2 days that saves 200 hours of work every day for a every month for a supplier. Another example is BIM as a service. They actually get it as well. They use BIM server as one of the nodes of BIM data within a whole set of legacy systems. They can come in with this system and connect your document management system, your maintenance system, your SAP ERP system is SAP used in Ireland, and just as a kind of a middleware and BIM objects connecting all those dots to each other. So one of the examples, I don't want to, like I said, I have nothing to sell, but I think this is a really good example of how some of the commercial companies actually implement the right strategy. So back to collaboration. State of BIM in the Netherlands at this moment, it's like using IFCs like sliced bread. The concept we came up with in 2012 is now the default way of working. And people really get that making a BIM model is not the goal. So redundant data, they don't worry about it. It will solve itself during the process. It's not about putting a lot of effort in perfecting a really nice BIM model. It's really more about getting a job done. We're working towards a goal. We're in a specific phase in a project. We just have to make it work. We even updated the sketchy picture from 2012. Basically, this is the same, only it starts on the left. There's your native data. This is the part you're being paid for. You share part of that data and kind of seamlessly integrates, but it's only there at that moment from the data you have at that time. do some analysis. Oh wait, I had nice pictures of that. So it's modeling on the left, coordination, conclusions, and communicating the issues back again. And this iteration loop just goes on for a couple of hours. I have a lot of these examples. There's the number of modeling tools that are being used inside a project. It's, most of the time it's quite the same as the number of partners involved. And it just seems to be working. Issues are communicated with BCF. One of the really great examples, I think, is that after the design, the contractor takes the design, he fine-tunes it a little bit, and then sends off the parts of that BIM model to the suppliers. And the suppliers come back with their engineered part. So suppliers bring back stairs or walls or whatever. And they actually use Solibri to do a model check between the original design and the newly brought in products. So all done in IFC and all integrated. So every object in there should be in their duplicate. So this is not about making a nice BIM model. This is about coordination and collaboration. Every object in this model is in their duplicate and on the same position with the same material. And otherwise, we didn't do our job. Same example. This is actually one of the rule sets, checking a limestone supplier in a design. We've got examples of people that export from ArchiCAD, export to IFC in 3 different ways. One for a coordination view, a different IFC export to do temperature measurements and a CO2 carbon print, because the other people need other types of data, and it's impossible to export one type of IFC, one type of BIM data that everyone can use. Sorry for ruining the dream, but it just doesn't happen. And meanwhile, the question is, who's taking notes? Well, National BIM Guidelines is taking notes. This is actually people working on modeling and working in practice. They are taking notes. They called it National BIM Guidelines because they want it to be taken serious. And it actually seems to be working. So there's a group of people that actually guard that no new innovation or cool stuff will be in the guidelines, but only things that work. Only people that have done it 100 times and done it 50 times the wrong way. Only people that know what doesn't work are allowed to write something that does work inside of this. We're, as a research institute, collaborating with these people also. We even do publications on that when a little bit more detailed research is necessary. So recently we came up with a new publication on the phases, because no one could agree on how many phases there are in a BIM process and when you should have a handover between the design and the engineering or whatever. So we really looked into that process in detail, and we came up that everyone's using the same process. They just call it different. So the flags of the phase naming, we couldn't fill that in because we couldn't agree on where engineering should be or where production should be. But in the end, this is the phasing that's going on in a BIM project. Other results we came up in this last research was that there are still many myths around IFC. But maybe more important, the Dutch top-down policymakers, they work on concept libraries, they work on a national BIM protocol, they work on legal issues. All of those issues are, there are no issues at all in the industry itself. The industry itself really has to deal with other issues. So the top-down approach and the bottom-up approach from actual users are not on the same track in our country. And one of the conclusions was that we have to educate the top-down policy thinkers. Another conclusion is that a standardized BIM execution plan is impossible. So when you really ask people how they work in different projects with different partners, they say it's impossible to make a national BIM execution plan. And when you ask them why, they always say, in a team, you have to sit on a table, you have to ask others what they want. What do they need to do their job? And it's different in each project. And you have different partners in each project, different software tools, different contractual agreements, so people are allowed to do more or less. So we kind of took that experiment and and created a BIM execution plan generator. And the BIM execution plan generator is basically someone initiates this process and it sends out a questionnaire to the main collaboration partners in a project. All these collaboration partners fill out a questionnaire, and there are questions in there like, why do you think we're going to use BIM? What should be the top priority of model checks on the Friday afternoon? What software are you using? What data do you need from others? And especially that last question, it's actually question 8 in the questionnaire. People can't answer. They're used to saying, just give me everything, I'll figure it out. So with this tool, they're allowed to think about that in their own environment, behind their own PC, put in the questionnaire, and the system then brings back together those topics, and it kind of gives you a red, yellow, and green light. Like you need data from this partner, you're using this software, you're not using that, you can both handle IFC, so this is probably will go right, and it's green, but there are also parts that it doesn't go right and it's yellow, and really, really urgent issues that you have to discuss before you start collaboration, because it will probably won't work out in the rest of the project. So the BIM execution planner actually asks people what their preferred way of working is, what do they need from others, what can they provide, and people respond to this as it's more like a team building machine. There's more people that use that picture to explain that they have to sit on a table and together make a BIM execution plan than the people that are actually using the tool. So it's really about collaborating, talking to each other, trying to work hand in hand in a project. And maybe this is the point I'm trying to make. When you Google for BIM, you get this black box pictures in the middle. When you Google for collaboration, you kind of seemingly get the same pictures, but without the black box. So every time you have to do something and you don't exactly know what you need, don't put BIM there, because it's not a solution. It won't solve anything for you. You still have to actually know what you're talking about and do a job. So beware of the quest for structure and centralization and the BIM manager. That there are actually projects in the Netherlands that different collaboration partners are not allowed to talk to each other because they all have to talk to the BIM manager. It's not the most successful project, I can tell you. So, how about Ireland? Are you collaborating? Are you doing a top-down approach? Are you doing a bottom-up approach? Is there collaboration? Actually, I was hoping that this part would be a discussion about how you use IFC, but since there are only 5 of you using IFC, I'll talk to you during the break. I hope I didn't ruin your vision on centralizing BIM or using central data repositories, and actually to hope that you will loosen up. I have to admit that I Googled the Irish flag. It seems that the green part is the traditional Celtics, and the orange is the followers of William of Orange, and the white is the peace in the middle. So just to say you that there used to be a time where Ireland and England were under the same Union Jack flag, wasn't it? Just put all the basic flags on top of each other and make a Union Jack. How did that work out for you? Again, yeah. Thank you. So I'm hoping that the traditional Irish, or at least the Irish, and William of Orange actually was Dutch. So this is the reason why we play in orange during the soccer matches. I could still hope that we have the peace in the middle between the both of us. So to round up, because my time was up, I just heard, I think this is my main message I want to give to you. Everyone tells about BIM is an iceberg and you only see the top, and there's so much more complexity downstairs. I understand, but I really got the impression that there's a lot of people, and I'm not saying that this is you, but there's a lot of people also in the Netherlands that talk about that top, and they talk about legal issues and handover and how great it would be in the future to do data-driven operations. And there's actually a silent majority somewhere underneath the surface that's actually doing it already. It is happening, also in Ireland. And we got perfect Tekla models from Oren Precast. We're automating those, doing validation and checking. It's really nice. It's already happening, also in your country. And what I'm really hoping, especially in the Netherlands, is that this iceberg will tip. I don't know if you've ever seen a tipping iceberg. It's amazing. The chances of that happening is, at the moment, closest to when it breaks away from the glacier. So I'm urging you, now that BIM is still just taking off, the iceberg just broke off the glacier. What are you talking about now on that top, and what's actually underneath? Make sure that the people that are underneath the surface that are actually doing it, make sure they tip up. Because the beauty of the ice underneath, because it doesn't get sunlight, it's not damaged by sand or anything. It's the most brilliant, beautiful iceberg you'll ever see. So please, flip the iceberg. And your discussions today, tomorrow, the rest of the week, in the future, they define what you will talk about. They define what's on the top of that iceberg. Will it be the PDF documents you all talk about? Will it be the legal constraints? Or will it be the things that are actually going on already inside your country with BIM? So ask yourself after today, how can we flip the iceberg? How can we get the silent majority in here? Thank you very much.